Again, from the 10th chapter of Matthew that Betsy read earlier, a few words. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. In whom do we trust? Where is our true allegiance? In these days of pandemic and our rising social awareness of racial injustice, we don't always know who to trust. We are tempted to fall back to trust ourselves, to trust our own logic, our common sense, to depend on our own resources, our own minds, our own vision. We are tempted to stick up for our own rights above the rights of others. We are taught in today's pop psychology that to be dependent is to be trusting in someone else is to be sick. It is called codependency. And there are times when codependency is bad, but in the long run, aren't we all codependent? In his book, Care of the Soul, Thomas More says that to be dependent is to be attached to people, to learn from them, to get advice from someone we respect. In other words, to trust. Going back a few years, a story that most of you will probably remember, either the book or the movie Jurassic Park. The creation of dinosaurs from the manipulating of DNA molecules. And throughout the story, the owner of the company, the man behind the dinosaur park, the man with the vision, sees only the possibilities of great wealth, the possibilities of creating something children will love, a park filled with animals their imaginations could only dream of. The man who owns the company in the park is named John Hammond, and on his staff is a mathematician who he has hired as a consultant. Now, Ian Malcolm, that mathematician, is skeptical right from the start. His mathematical outlook on life and his mathematical equations tell him that no system of containment and control will work forever on living, breathing creatures. Of course, we know the story. We know that these dinosaurs are anything but controllable. And lying near death at the end of the movie, Ian Malcolm rails at Hammond. You are so arrogant. You thought you could control life. You thought you could control nature. And you can't. You never have. You never will. Hammond trusted in his own vision alone. He trusted in the science of his logical, rational mind, the ability of his assistants. He trusted in himself to be able to manipulate and control a form about which he knew very little. And now that I have stirred things up and said that life is not controllable, what is next? Into this picture on a Sunday morning, in the middle of a sermon, one would think that Jesus would enter and say that everything is just fine, trust in me. But instead of sweetness and light, instead of peace and prosperity, Jesus offers these words: do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have come to bring a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Wow, these words of Jesus are shocking. Shocking to those disciples 2,000 years ago, and shocking to those of us who call ourselves his disciples today. The one we think of as gentle, forgiving, concerned, ever-loving, says that he has not come to bring peace but a sword. Then he dares to undermine what we deem to be sacred, the relationship of parent and child. One commentator has said, even in our century, far-flung, empty nest, single-parent, one-generation families, we still wriggle uncomfortably when Jesus asserts that to love father, mother, son, or daughter more than we love the Christ is to make ourselves unworthy. So what gives? Is Jesus promoting the destruction of the family? Is this Jesus promoting the kind of chaos and disorder we find in Jurassic Park, or even on the streets of our major cities today? Or is Jesus using bold, provocative, radical words to press home a point, to get the attention of that ancient world, to get the attention of us in the 21st century? Jesus is not promoting war or hate or violence in the streets. Jesus is forcing us to look at our true allegiance. Where do we finally put our trust? The key to understanding the depth of Jesus' meaning here is to think beyond the current narrow meaning of the term family. In Jesus' day, family meant a vast, extended network of relationships, forming an economic and sometimes political entity known as a clan. We have lost most of the elements of the extended family in our transient and independent society. In those days, loyalty to the clan was expected above all else. A negative example we could use today would be gangs or organized crime. Many articles and interviews with members of these gangs or the mafia families report that this is the only place where these individuals feel accepted, feel cared for, feel protected. Jesus is getting at a profound, fundamental human need, the need to love and to be loved. Jesus is asking, where do we put our trust? In the clan? In the family? In our own intelligence, like the founder of Jurassic Park? Or do we place our need to be loved and love in him? Gerald G. May, a psychiatrist and professor, begins his book, Addiction and Grace, with this bold theological insight. I am convinced, he writes, that all human beings have an inborn desire for God, whether we are consciously religious or not. This desire is our deepest longing and our most precious treasure. Regardless of how we describe it, it is a longing for love. It is a hunger to love, to be loved, and to move closer to the source of love. This yearning is the essence of the human spirit. And Jesus is calling us to fulfill this need in him. His name is Ron. He was not a member of the church I served in Salem, Oregon, but his wife was a member. And during dinner at their house one evening, Ron began a monologue about his life and faith. Ron had been a Lutheran minister in the 1960s, another time of great civil unrest in our country. He was an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War in a very conservative congregation. It was a difficult time for the church and for Ron. And Ron finally resigned and went to work for the state of Oregon. During this difficult period as a young pastor, one of Ron's daughters developed a high fever. Before they could get her to the hospital, she suffered brain damage. Today, Kelly is strong physically, but now lives with disabilities in a home in Oregon. Around the dinner table that evening, Ron spoke very freely about his loss of faith, about the ineffectiveness of the church. And he spoke with a certain arrogance about how his thinking had gone beyond all the theologians. It was a very uncomfortable period during that dinner. that evening. Our 2 young daughters were with us, and for them it was hard to hear such a bitter monologue. When we returned home, we talked with a friend about the experience, and he said it doesn't sound like bitterness as much as a profound loneliness. Have the hard knocks of life driven us to trust only in what we ourselves can control? In whom do we trust? If Jesus was trying to move his first century listeners away from placing the authority of the clan above all else, then I believe he is calling us in the 21st century to loosen our grip on that which routinely claims our highest allegiance, ourselves, our own group, our own clan, our pride, our bitterness. That seems to say I or we or my group are all that I am concerned about. Whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. No, Jesus is not calling us to hate our family or even to hate ourselves, but he is calling us to quit trying to find our ultimate security there. He is calling us to quit trying to put ourselves or even our family first, to quit trying to control, or at least try to control, the world around us, the people around us. Jesus is calling us to put our trust in him. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. What we forget to consider when we hear these tough words of Jesus is that love does not operate as if there is only so much to go around. To love Christ and to know one is loved by him does not restrict or diminish love, but instead it fills us, it frees us, it raises the level of love available for all people, and especially those whom we hold most dear, and maybe even those who are different from us. Those who lose their life for my sake will find it. In whom do we trust? Amen.